right? Group wasn't, no, I think you're right. Because last time, they got lots of them and sort of got.
As soon as we get some warmer weather, it's fix my problems. I was up there with him. No worries. Yeah. And that's, we've been fighting that problem for a long time. I said, we must those babies. We just looked at it.
I got 5:30. What do you have? Okay, the time is 5:30, and we're going to open this meeting of the Stephenville Planning and Zoning Commission. The first thing we're going to do is, well, Jeremy, are we going to start with swearing in?
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
start with the swearing in advance, and you can stay there. We started, but she's gonna swear you in. First meeting.
Okay, raise your right hand. You repeat after me. I, Vance Wade,
I, Vance Wade,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office
that I will faithfully execute the duties in the office
of Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Stephenville
of Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Stephenville
and State of Texas,
and State of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will to the best of my ability
preserve,
preserve,
protect,
protect,
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and the laws of the United States
and of this state, so help me God.
and of this state, so help me God. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Vance.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to move on to consider approval of minutes. First, let's take up the planning and zoning minutes from January 29th. Do we have any corrections noted for that? I noticed the tiniest thing, that the time of it says 5:13 instead of 5:30.
Okay.
I know. We've got to be accurate.
Is that the beginning, Lisa?
Yeah, at the very beginning.
I move we approve with that correction.
Second.
Let's take a vote. All those in favor of approving the January 29th minutes, say aye. Those opposed? Okay, that passes. Moving on to the agenda, to the Planning and Zoning Commission minutes of January 16th. Do I have a motion to approve?
So made.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the Planning and Zoning Commission minutes for January 16th, say aye.
Aye.
Approved. Okay, we are now going to move on to our first agenda item, for which Vance Wade has a conflict of interest, so he will need to step down.
First deal.
This is embarrassing. This is just ice cream. You did last time.
It was nice having you. Okay. The subject is case number PD 2019-001. Consider a concept plan for a planned development district zoning classification of Green Acre Addition, being lots 2-21, Block 9, Green Acres Addition, City of Stephenville. Jeremy.
I think it's 002.
The applicant has met the, yeah, it should be 002, so the staff report has 001, but the concept plan should be 002.
Okay.
So, the applicant has met the requirements of the concept plan for plan development. Staff recommends approval of the concept plan with a positive recommendation. The applicant will be guided through the process to submit a development plan to be heard through the commission and council. You guys have some of the background for what a planned development is. You guys have heard through a planned development. So typically, just to give you the cliff notes of it, concept plan is very similar to preliminary plat in that if there's any recommendation or changes needs to be done, needs to be done through the concept plan, and then they'll be brought back as a development plan, or what we'd call final plat in the next stage. The development history for this particular property, and I think I have some slides. So this was the original plat of the property back in 2012, I believe. I had to get my dates. I might have it on here. 2014. So that's the way it stands now. As you guys can remember, back in October, they came through. They were going to replat the property. This is the current zoning. They were going to replat the property with Wiley Street running down the middle. There was some, typically with plating, it's administerial as long as it meets all the requirements of the plat. There was some requirements that needed to be varied. So at that particular time, the replat got denied. We had quite a few property owners in the area that came to the meeting and raised some concerns. Since then, council has approved the development agreement for the property, which puts the city at a position where we have to pay our proportional share of the road. We decided to get with some of the surrounding property owners, especially the ones that were adjacent to this, and see if we couldn't figure out some things that would work for this area to make it more feasible for the city and for the developer. And so what we've done is we came back with some of these suggestions, and we came back as a planned development. With a planned development, you're very restrictive to what you can do, and that everything that's approved will have to be abided by. Any different changes will have to come back to planning and zoning. So to say with all that mouthful, just to kind of go through some of these restrictions that we've came up with for the planned development for you guys to consider. You guys have the zoning and adjacent zoning, which is single family, the thoroughfare plans, but for the requirements of the planned development in this particular case, we'll kind of go through these. Typically a single family neighborhood would be 1,500 square feet. For this planned development, the developer has agreed to do 1,700 square feet as a minimum instead of 1,500. The type of construction, we don't really have a requirement in a single family district. The developer has agreed to do an 812 roof pitch. Type of construction for the singles, we don't have a requirement, but he's agreed to do a 30-year dimensional roof shingles. The landscape, he's going to meet the landscaping requirements. Parking requirements, we ask for 2 vehicle parking spaces per lot. He's going to do a 2-car garage. Minimum lot size is 7,500 square feet. He's met that. Just to look at the setbacks, is the minimum setback's 25 feet. He's meeting that. Side yards is 7 feet with a corner at 25. He's meeting that requirement. Let's kind of go through these. The road standards typically through a development would be a 50-foot right-of-way. In order to kind of, I guess, appease, I don't know if that's the right word, but to work with the adjacent property owners to create a kind of a buffer, we basically narrowed down the road from a 50-foot right-of-way to a 40-foot right-of-way, leaving the 10-foot right-of-way at the top that will create an easement, that the city will have an easement through there, and the properties will, that 10-foot strip will be deeded over to those properties for them to upkeep, and then they can maintain that area as they choose for that. Let's see, let's make sure I don't leave anything out. There was a suggestion that I think probably needs to be put in here as part of the motion as we get to number 3, and I think even number 2 is the applicant will fence 100% of that property along the north side before the easement. And so the developer has agreed to do that and do that 100 feet. We just want to make sure, like we have in number 3, the Tab Street, there's no ingress and egress on that north side. We will make sure that's part of the recommendation. On the north side, there won't be any ingress, egress as well. So that'll keep people off of the property owner's property on that north side. So we want to make sure we're clear with that. The sidewalks, this one's a one that we've been working on. You guys have heard a couple waivers with this subdivision. Because it's a 40-foot right-of-way, we are asking for a waiver for the sidewalk requirements. The sidewalk will be down the middle of the development, so it'll really just be the development of the middle property. So, I could see it both ways in this particular case, but I think that's a good solution. The developer's talking about a nice fence and maybe even a footer on the north side to keep it nice and keep the fence in good shape. Let's see if I got any other. You guys have some pictures of the house, very quality houses that they're going to have through there. I can answer any questions. I think I've covered everything. I've kind of stumbled through it a little bit, but there's quite a bit through this concept plan, and so I'd definitely entertain any questions, and we can open the public hearing.
I just want to make sure I understand the sidewalks. So you're eliminating the sidewalks because you've shrunk the road, because you've deeded over 10 feet of land over to the easement, is that
Right.
correct?
So the pavement part of it will still be 31 feet. It's just typically on each side of the road, there's a 9.5-foot right-of-way on each side. So we're shrinking that down. So there's only going to be like 5 feet of right-of-way on each side. So we're narrowing that down. So that's why we would,
There'd be no room for
right,
sidewalks.
we reduce that restriction. And I think the developer's here. He can answer any questions. I think I've answered a lot, but if there's any questions for him or me, we can answer that.
Okay. Did you have a question, Todd?
Well, I was just gonna ask, though, but we wanna open public hearing
Yeah.
and then close it, then ask questions, and then?
Yes, and maybe if anybody has any questions, maybe either the developer or they can answer that, and if not, then I can, so.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. If there's anybody who wishes to speak in favor of this plat, you may come forward. We have a number of people who've signed up to speak. We have a 3-minute limit so that we can get through this quickly. So please come up to the microphone, state your name and address if you wish to speak in favor of this plat.
Right, it's the same day. In theory, there's not many changes between now and then.
I'm Mike Hill, I live at 223 Idella Street. My property would be on the north side of this subdivision, and our concern, and it looks like they're really working on that, is on that north side. We want a footer under that fence going all the way down. A couple of reasons. We don't want someone's dog to dig under that fence and eat our kids up later on, or something like that. And usually a fence stays a lot nicer if they got a footer under them. And then the other part about it is on the part where they deeded over to us to take care of it. If we're going to maintain it, and of course it'll put it back on the tax roll, so we'll be paying taxes on that 10-foot. And also it'll be a lot easier for us to maintain it. And if we don't have a divider between our property line and that fence. So if we take it all the way to the fence, we can keep it cleaned up, looking good from our standpoint. And that's pretty much all I've got that I can think of.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in favor of this plat? So the developer here do you have anything you want to add? Yeah, I assume you're in favor of it. Do you want to speak to his concern about the footer?
I just want to say I appreciate Jeremy trying to work a situation that's good for the city, because obviously the proportional share was substantial to the city. I think it was in total over $100,000, and there's a lot of areas the city would like to spend their money rather than on a small section of town in this one street. And I appreciate the local homeowners that are adjacent to the property. And last time when we were here, we were unaware of some of the concerns. So I want my hats off to everybody that's working on this proposal, because we want to be a good neighbor. I think the way the neighborhood lays out, I think it'll have a community feel. The houses that we're going to build will be of a nature that's priced, anywhere from about $225,000 to over $300,000. And I think it'll be a benefit to the surrounding area. So if there's any objections, I'll be glad to answer any questions or concerns about the type of product that we're building. But I just want to say my hats off, and I appreciate everybody working together, so.
Do you have any response on the footer that he was talking about for the fence?
Yeah, we normally don't do footers. I would agree to do the footer on that one side only. We do put up
On the north
cedar-
side?
Yeah, on the north side. We do metal poles, cedar pickets. So I would say our standard fencing that we currently use with a footer, it about doubles the cost of a fence to put in a footer.
Okay, but you're willing to do it along that north
We're
side
willing to
property?
do on that one side.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Idella Street is to the north of this, Tab Street is to the south. There is no Wiley Street at this point.
Correct.
Through this section. Why are you creating a street when you have access to both sides of these lots and not just putting an alley in there?
An alley.
Or just an area? I live just off of Bluebonnet, and in our neighborhood, we have about a 15-foot alley that the homeowners generally mow. But there's about 15 feet between the fences, but there's no street in there. With two streets already there, what's the point of creating a third one?
There's two different plat
Yeah.
designs, there's this
Okay.
plat design.
Yes.
and one
Sorry, I was just trying to show what property Mike was at, Mr. Hill was at. So this would be Wiley Street with Wiley down the middle, the 10-foot easement on the
I
top.
just wonder what the point of creating, when you have access to all of these lots on the north side and on the south side.
But you don't.
We're moving Wiley Street from the north side to the middle of the community.
It doesn't actually exist.
I thought
Yeah.
the entire development was from Idella all the way down to Tab.
No, there are houses along Idella.
There's-
There are
yeah,
properties,
there's three in
yeah,
there.
yeah.
I thought they were being bought out.
Oh, no,
No.
no,
No.
we'll be the south of that.
Your property owners that are
So
south of
those
Idella.
lines are not correct then. So you're saying the development stops here instead of here?
Correct.
I see, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's
I
not, and
didn't
that's not the
understand
plat
that.
layout either.
yeah. It's hard, yeah.
This is the plat layout.
That was the approved one in 2012. The
Right,
the
that's
road
the one
Wiley
they took
doesn't
down.
exist now, and so, yes. That's,
So you're gonna have a dog leg in Wiley Street then? It's-
and Wiley Street will end up being
Gonna move
it'll be
100 feet.
renamed, it won't be Wiley Street, it'll be
I see,
named
okay,
something
okay.
else. I was hoping I can
I'm
get
not
some,
looking at the
if I can get some
property, I'm
energy
trying to
for the
understand.
Jeremy Allen Street, it'd be great, but I don't know if I can convince enough people. But I'm trying.
Well, if you narrow that down to one name, you might be able to
Oh,
do
leave
it.
it Wiley, we're known for dog-eared little streets all over town. We do this all over the place.
Okay, any further
Okay.
questions?
I
Are we good?
misunderstood the whole
Okay.
place then.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in favor of this? Okay, then we'll close, I'm sorry, does anybody wish to speak against the Green Acres addition? Is there anybody here who wishes to speak against it? If you could state your name, address.
Okay,
for
my
us,
name
thank
is
you.
Wayne Blue. I live at 333 Wiley, which is just west of the proposed property. In other words, my east property line is the city street, and then the property is to the east of that. I don't know that I'm against it, I'm just wanting to know about, I want some information on whether, are we gonna have fence around the whole property? Or are we gonna have just the fence on the north side?
We will fence each and every house that we build. So but we'll fence them as we build the homes on the south side.
So what about the east and the west?
We start at the back corner of the house and go to the rear property line.
So the fence will be the property owners?
Yes, and we try to put it on the property line to where you're sharing a fence in between homes.
Now, who maintains the property to the other side of the fence?
Behind the fence?
No, well, they're gonna maintain it on the north side, but on the south side, say it's fenced, and who maintains the property from the fence to the
To
road?
the road. That's a good question.
I can answer that question for you. So our ordinance, and a lot of people don't know this, we get them with code enforcement, but So the ordinance reads that the property owner is responsible for their property line all the way to the center line of the road. So they are responsible all the way to center line road. Now, of course, most property owners don't have to go out in the middle of the road to take care of that, but they are you see grass on the curb and all that. That's not the city's responsibility. That's the property owner's responsibility. So that's the way our ordinance reads. So on the other side of that fence, even though it's in the right of way, that's the property owner's responsibility to take care of that.
Okay, now what happens if they don't?
They'll get code compliance. We'll get them.
Okay, well, the reason I'm asking, where I live, I've been there for 45 years. And, you know, the county has taken, or the city has taken, I live in the county, either one. I'm a city on the east side. But they don't take care of their property line.
On the east
In
side,
other words, from the road to the telephone poles is that my responsibility, what you're saying?
are you in the city limits? We'll get you with the code compliance too. If
No,
you,
I'm in the,
I'm taking notes.
I'm in the county, but my east property boundary is the city limits.
I'll have to take a look at it. I mean, the county doesn't have code compliance, so I mean, if it's in the city limits, we can enforce code.
I'm
I
t-
guess Wayne is saying.
Let me see if I.
The, our narrow part of the property is on Hillcrest. So half of Hillcrest is county and half of Hillcrest is city.
So the side that you guys are on, we couldn't enforce codes, but on the other side of Hillcrest, on this side of the development, we could enforce the code on this side. So we would make sure that whoever they end up selling those lots to, they're the ones responsible for upkeeping that property.
Okay, now how about a drainage study? Is the city gonna require a drainage study?
Absolutely, 100%.
Well, now who enforces that?
We do. Planning and
Okay.
building public, we will not issue a building permit until, they don't even get to me until they pass civil.
The reason I'm asking, of course, I've been there 45 years, and Dale has been closed on account of water being over Dale, at Dale and Tab, for a number of times. I don't know the exact amount, but over 3 or 4.
We have several, and I'll answer this. We have several streets in the city when rain comes, we have to close, and that's why we're even more thorough than what we have been in the past with drainage and making sure it clears drainage. Is we want to make sure that we try to eliminate or mitigate the drainage issues. So
Well-
they will have to pass civil engineering with Public Works before they even get to me where I'm issuing building permits.
Okay.
So the way that it reads is they can't put any additional impact on any adjacent properties.
Well, the drainage off this property is gonna put an impact on them.
Well, they'll have to hold the water somewhere. They can't have additional impact to you or your properties or the downstream properties.
I had a Ford Lincoln Mercury dealership here, and when I got ready to build it, I had to do a drainage study on it. And they talked like to build a holding pond. Well, we finally didn't do that, but I knew we had to have a drainage study before our permits were approved.
Yeah, they will. They cannot get
I
a
don't-
building permit until
Have you
then.
been out to where Tab comes into Dale?
Sure, and I know our Public Works, we've already had several meetings with developers prior to the replat, and I think we have, a lot of the drainage issues have already been discussed, I believe.
Okay. Don't you own the property that's, if you're coming down Tab to Dale, going east, don't y'all own that lot?
That's
there?
right, yep.
Now then, to the right of that used to be a tank. Now it's overgrown or whatever. Isn't that part of the drainage?
Part of what drainage?
Off of, the drainage off of, the corner of Tab and Tab and Dale. In other words, where the water gets over Dale is right there at Tab.
Right, so, I mean, I don't know about how the drainage was addressed prior, I just will tell you that this development cannot have an additional impact to that. So while they may not, we can't enforce them to make them clean that up if there is drainage issues, they cannot have an additional impact on that. Now, what they do may probably clean some of that up and help with drainage, but they can't have an additional impact to that drainage.
Okay, I think that's the questions I had. It'll be curb and guttered, right?
Down the middle, yes, down the middle.
Just not on the east, not on the north and south side, just on the, down in Wiley, or whatever that new road's gonna be.
Well, we haven't discussed the curb and gutter lately when we talked about on Tab Street and even to the north, but originally when the road was going to be platted like you see right there, they were going to do curb on the south side of Wiley, and then they were going to do curb on the north side of Tab. That some of that has to do with drainage, and they were going to leave the open ditches on the south side of Tab and the north side of Wiley. I have not seen we haven't talked drainage in a while because we've been working through this concept plan. So my guess is we're going to require curb and gutter on the north side of Tab, but not the south side of Tab.
The north side of Tab.
Right.
Okay. And then down the new proposed street on either side,
Right. Yes.
but not across the north side.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. I guess that's all I've got. Not against it, I just wanted those questions, and when we get information on what the final deal will be.
Yes. Well, you'll get letters just like you did before.
Okay.
I'm sure whatever comes out of this concept plan tonight will be, pretty close to the final development plan that's submitted at the next available meeting when everything's addressed. And
Yeah.
so I can't imagine, depending on what you guys come up with, that it'll be a lot different than what it looks like tonight.
And I just, I'd like to see an addition that looks good and is kept nice, and, because our property is, we've got bigger places than this, but we'd just like to see it maintained, and it's gonna be there for a number of years. We'd like to see it nice and kept nice. So, that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Debbie Blue, 333 Wiley. And you said something else?
3 minutes.
Okay. Just basically thinking about traffic. I think if we're going to have 20 beautiful homes and 2-car garage, we're going to talk about 40 cars at least, maybe 3 cars per. And where's all this traffic going to go? And therefore, potholes, therefore speeding. We have a lot of speeding going on right now. Tab and Wiley are both flat, straight, and it's an opportunity for somebody to check out their new or old car, whatever. And we have a lot of, people go more than 30. There are only 1 or 2 signs that say 30. And maybe we need some more signs, or maybe we just need more enforcement. I'm not sure, but that's a concern of ours. And do you think, when you're thinking, would most people come out onto Hillcrest or out onto Dale? I mean, that's the only choice they have. I mean, what are some of the thoughts that y'all have?
I have not given a lot of thought to traffic patterns. I'm not sure which direction most people will be going.
Well, sure, but it's not so much the pattern as it is the confusion that it's going to cause in the neighborhood. I mean, since they put the humps, whatever they call them, down Dale, it causes a lot of people coming over to Hillcrest. So they come off of 108, cut down in front of us, Hillcrest, and then speed up our street on our,
Speed bumps.
to avoid the speed bumps. But speed bumps or no speed bumps, they're still going more than 30, and, we're talking probably a lot of young families with children, a lot of children, and still some grandchildren in the neighborhood. And it's just, traffic it's a concern because.
I agree. I live on Blue Bonnet, and a lot of people use that as a shortcut, and then you drive to Hills.
Right, so what are you doing about it over there?
Speed bump.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if my 3 minutes is up, but that's basically my concerns, because I think everyone else is addressing. Would they put possibly footers underneath the tab side, where they're gonna put those on the end of the 10? Or is that not,
The north side of,
but this, yeah, the north side of tab, where the back,
no, as far as concrete footers,
well, I'm sure you're gonna put them on the north side.
north side of Wiley.
Yes, sir. Okay, but not on the other? Okay. And the people who live there, those 10 families, have to come out around the corner and take care of their property, supposedly?
That's the thought, you know, if each homeowner is required to maintain that area between their back of their fence and the street, it might behoove us to put a small gate on the back side of the fence. Otherwise, how do you walk all the way around the other side of the street? You can't get
Well,
behind
that's
that.
another thought. We were thinking that if people did have access from Tab, then people would park on Tab, and Tab's not that big, and it's right there by that big pond, and, you know, it'd be a lot of confusion if more cars were directed on Tab rather than staying inside this Wiley with the new name. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so your question is how are we going to direct more traffic to a certain area?
I don't know if it's so much of a question as it is a lot of thoughts, a lot of things for all of us to think about,
Worries and concerns.
because there's so many.
How we as a builder, developer would be able to direct traffic.
Well, I mean, I'll just address the traffic part of it from our side. You know, we only ask a traffic impact analysis to be done by a developer if it's supposed to go over 500, additional 500 trips a day. And in this development, it wouldn't fall into place. So we haven't asked the developer to address the traffic issue. That would be something that we would look at. My guess is that probably what we'll do is, you know, there was originally, for most people that don't know, there was originally a traffic analysis done for those speed humps. So it warranted speed humps on Dale Street at the time. What you have now is that it's rerouted some traffic. With this additional impact, you know, that we have with this development, we can relook at that study and see if those speed humps are still warranted with additional traffic patterns. So that's what I'll make a recommendation to Public Works to do. I don't know if it's gonna change the outcome, so don't everybody get excited, so.
Right.
But we can look at that if that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, of course, too, you know, your property that you want to build on is in the city, and we're just up the street a few feet, and we're in the county, but it's still supposed to be 30 miles per hour, is that right?
I believe so.
I bet when you did your traffic study on Dale, there was more than 500, wasn't there?
Well, we're,
Put in the speed hump.
well, I'm talking about, we don't ask the developer to do any traffic analysis unless their development has an additional impact of 500. So what we did, because we had some complaints on Dale Street, is we did the analysis ourselves. And so because we're not asking a developer to do it, but we have had some concerns about the traffic, we can relook at that analysis. It probably wouldn't take much to freshen that up. I mean, of course, I say that, and they'll probably look at me kind of crazy, but I think that's something we should probably look at. It's been 2-3 years since we put those speed humps out there, and let's look at the traffic pattern again. So I
Well,
make that recommendation.
It's like Wayne said, he's been here, I've only been here 6 or 7 years, but the traffic's getting, you know, there are a lot more.
That would pull the traffic off our roads,
Right.
you know, quite a bit.
Well, let's look at the analysis. 'Cause like I said, there was a study done. Let's see what that's going to be. So I don't want to speak and get everybody excited for something I'm not qualified to do. So
And you can only speak for the city, you can't speak for the county, is that right? Because,
that's right. I can speak for the county if anybody wants me to. I don't think it'll get us very far.
I don't
so.
know, I mean,
Yeah, no, I would not speak for the county. I can only speak for the city. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Okay, we're going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, I will entertain a motion.
Jeremy, a question. Since this traffic analysis has come up, I guess my question is whether or not at this particular point in time, do we want to postpone any decision on this until that information is made available to us?
Well, we need to act on it, but, you know, that could be 6 months down the road, and the developer's not required to do that. So, you know, unless there's an impact of over 500 trips a day, which, you know, 20 houses aren't going to do that. So we can't ask that of the developer.
Okay.
I make a motion that PD 2019-002 be approved.
I second
All those, or do you have
Yeah.
question?
I'd like to
Yeah.
make an amendment to include concrete headers for the fence on the north side and a gate outlet on the south side to the proposed gates.
Footers.
No, not the footers on the
No,
south
I know
side.
you said headers instead of footers.
Oh,
for the-
sorry,
yeah.
yeah, footers on the north side and gate access on the south side.
But to be clear, that's pedestrian gates, not,
Pedestrian gates,
because we do not want traffic in and out,
Correct,
cars on them.
pedestrian gates
Okay.
to fit a lawnmower through, not to exceed 36 inches in diameter. In diameter and length and whatever you want to put on there.
Okay, there was a motion,
Who seconded that motion?
No one seconded the motion.
The first one.
Okay, thank you.
That was the first one. Now we need a second for the amendment.
do we have a second for the amendment?
Second.
Now we need a vote on the amendment.
We never had a vote on the original
That's
motion.
fine. We need
Okay,
to vote
so-
on the amendment, and then we'll come back and vote depending on how the amendment comes out.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Okay.
So
All
now-
those in favor of approval of the plat, say aye. Aye.
Not a plat. It's a
Plan-
rezone plan development. Thank you.
Sorry, plan development. Those against, say nay. All right, so this passes, and we're moving on.
So with those, now, Mr. Wade's come back, with those changes, we will, at the earliest possible convenience with the developer, we'll make those changes and make sure we bring that back for the development plan, probably next meeting or whenever the developer, we can get that together, so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is case number ZA 2019-001. Consider a recommendation to the city council to amend the zoning ordinance by adding sweepstakes facility as a conditional use, special use permit in the permitted uses within the retail and commercial business district B2. Jeremy.
So we looked at this last time, and we can revisit it a little bit if you guys have questions, but this is, to add a conditional use to the sweepstakes, for a sweepstakes facility in our zoning. We currently don't have a permitted use for a sweepstakes facility. As you guys may or may not remember, our city attorney has gave his opinion that this is an illegal use, and he suggested we treat it that way. You guys can, take the facts into consideration, your own research, and make your recommendation how you see fit.
So we have no further discussion on this from the lawyer.
Yeah, they sent some stuff over to Mr. Thomas after the last meeting. Mr. Thomas holds his opinion.
Okay.
So, I got a question then, how can this be legal in other cities in Texas, which the applicant said he was in what, 60 or something? Different localities? I don't recall the exact number.
Well, it depends on how your zoning
Quite a
on.
few different localities within this state, and they have all been legal. And how can it not be legal in Stephenville as opposed to the other cities? Because I was under the impression that it was state law, or the city attorney was using state law as the basis for his opinion.
Right, so the couple of cities they referenced, Hamilton and Brownwood, in their zoning ordinance, they have what they call an entertainment is an allowed use. And so that's how they've been classified there. We don't have an entertainment as allowed use, so we really don't have an allowed use in our zoning. So now they have to come and ask for that allowed use, and we've made Mr. Thomas has made the opinion that it's not a legal use. And so there is quite a bit of state law. If you've done any research, know that there's been some state law that's contested this and won. There is a case out there, the sweepstakes has won in court. So there's more that have not won than there is the one. These sweepstakes facilities has held on to one court case. And that's the way that I understand. I'm not an attorney, but this is the way that I understand. And that's the cases that I've read, is there's one that they hold on to that says that it is a legal use, but there's more out there that says it's not a legal use.
So I don't recall the exact number from last month's meeting. I thought they said they had around 30 or 35 of these facilities, yet they only provided details for 2
That's the only two they provided to me. I think before we go too much in, let's open it up for public hearing if there's anybody here for, and then I can ask additional questions.
Okay, so we're going to open this up to a public hearing. Is there anybody who wishes to speak in favor of this conditional use for a sweepstakes facility? Anybody who wishes to speak against? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, and we can entertain a motion or have further discussion.
I move that we recommend to the city council disapproval of to amending the zoning ordinance by adding sweepstake facilities.
Second.
Any discussion, or do we want to get straight to the vote?
Mr. Dad, if you have any more questions, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's
Okay.
fine. I mean, you answered the question, because like I say, they said supposedly they had 30 or 35 or some fairly large number of these facilities throughout the state, and yet they only provided you with 2 examples of where they were legal, so.
Well, and it also seems
I
pretty much a
question
gray
their
area
testimony.
throughout the United States from what I've looked at. There's been a lot of states that there have been contentious legal battles on this end, and, yeah, and in our state. It seems pretty questionable to me that it's.
Seems
truly-
pretty borderline, that's
It
for
does,
sure.
and personally, I consider, when I look at this, I think about the direction that we want Stephenville to go to. And I think establishments like this suggest to me a community, a citizenry that is struggling somewhat and is looking for money fast. And I think we are looking to build our city in terms of bringing in investors and having people move here and want to move to a prosperous city that is doing well. I think this sends the wrong signal about the direction we want our city to go in.
I agree.
Anybody else have anything they wish to say? Shall we move to a vote? Although, okay, those who, if we wish to, those who wish to vote against this conditional use permit as moved by Dr. Padronas, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, this passes. And now we move along to case number SUP 2019-001. Applicant Paige Rankin is requesting a conditional use permit. to
We can
establish-
remove this one.
Can we
since-
just remove it
yeah.
because it's no longer applicable, so
Right.
we don't even need to cover it?
No.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Case number SV 2019-001, applicant Alex Fambro is requesting a subdivision waiver from section 6.11.A sidewalk requirements to be constructed at 942 Bluebonnet, Stephenville, Texas.
Let's see, let me find it. Mr. Alex Fambro is requesting a waiver of a sidewalk requirement to be constructed at 942 Bluebonnet Street. Let's see if I can kind of, you guys have heard a couple of these. So he has the property there that he has replatted into 2 separate lots. They hope to develop the other side. It is commercial zoning. Future land use calls for it to be single family. So you can't really see very good. Maybe in your packet it's a little better, but you can see the right of way at the very front, the 9.5 feet. That's where the sidewalk would go. He's asking for a waiver for just that portion of the sidewalk. And so I can answer any questions, or we can open it for hearing.
What is the width of the sidewalk, 5 feet? Is that what the code calls for?
If it's attached to the curb, it's 5 feet. If it's separated from the curb, it's 6 feet.
I see, okay. Because there's a fire hydrant that's about 8 feet from the curb in that location. And unfortunately, at that point, a sidewalk would go from nowhere to nowhere because the property behind him is residential.
Jeremy, what's staff's recommendation?
Well, I mean, staff with all the sidewalks has not came up with a recommendation to waive any. We typically want sidewalks. We come together with a sidewalk improvement plan. You look at the other part of this development that's going to, develop the other, I guess you call it a L shape. I mean, that'll have a sidewalk there too. You could make the argument that there isn't no sidewalks out there and it's residential. It's not part of our sidewalk improvement plan. But our recommendation that we keep the sidewalk in. But you guys can make the recommendation based on the facts that you guys have.
Okay, let's open this to a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor?
Yes, ma'am.
Please state your name and address.
Yes, ma'am. It's Alec Fambro, 9449 County Road 109, Mingus. I'm addressing the issue. There's just no sidewalks on either side of us. We wouldn't really know where it'd go from there. In fact, it would actually just run into a fence from there. So that's the reason we were requesting.
What are you building right there?
It's animal health.
Okay.
It's Animal Health Lab, Texas Animal Health Lab.
Any other questions?
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak in favor? Anybody who wishes to speak against? Okay, closing the public hearing. Commissioners, thoughts, motions?
Well, if there was a sidewalk there, it would dead end into residential property where there is no sidewalk.
On one side.
Yeah. I mean, this place is right behind my house. I'm on the other side from my house. There's a lot of people that walk in the neighborhood, but we all walk in the street because they're all wide streets. There's really no need for a sidewalk in this neighborhood at all.
My feeling is that we have the sidewalk ordinance. If we continue to give waivers, because it's piecemeal, we're never going to actually have sidewalks. We have to start being consistent with the way the sidewalk ordinance exists. I think we've got to be consistent and allow it to exist. Otherwise, we're just always going to have the argument we shouldn't have sidewalks because we don't have sidewalks.
Well, I agree with that, except in this case, Aaron's didn't put in a sidewalk, Southside didn't, so there's already a precedent set, neither did the whole neighborhood. And I would agree with that, and that's why until you get a waiver process in place, you're gonna have to continue to have these waivers, because we are trying to get sidewalks, but in certain neighborhoods, if you put a sidewalk here, and you put a sidewalk on this piece of property, then you put one due south of there's another plat there, and there's a sidewalk there, it's gonna dead end on each side, so you're gonna have a stretch of 100 yards.
But what about development down the road? If something develops down the road, we need those sidewalks put in.
Where? There's already development there. Those
Yeah.
buildings aren't getting crushed.
But they might, we don't know. I mean, we are planning for the future. We are trying to create sidewalks throughout our city. And this is when it happens.
I move to approve SV 2019-001 waiver of a sidewalk.
I'll second.
All those who are in favor of the approval of the waiver, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No?
Aye.
So 3 opposed? So
Who was
I,
the third one?
Meta, Patronus, and I. So I believe it passes, correct? Yeah. Okay, so that passes. Moving on. Okay, case number PD 2019-003, consider a concept plan for a planned development district zoning classification for lots 1 and 3, block 156 of the city addition to the city of Stephenville. Jeremy.
The applicant has met the requirements of a concept plan. Staff recommends approval of the concept plan with a positive recommendation from the applicant. Will be guided through the process, submit a development plan similar to what we went through a little earlier. You guys have some of the requirements of the plan development, and we will talk a little bit about what's going to be required out of this plan development. Just let me get there. So this is a lot that we're talking about off of Tarleton and Floral. It's currently a vacant lot. I believe it has been for quite a long time. So the zoning is Central Business District, which does allow for residents in that district. just to talk a little bit about the minimum square footage. So the minimum area of the main building that's required in a single family is 1,500. This will be 1,656. No requirement for the type of construction, as you can see from some of the site plans, and I think there was a picture in your guys' packet, what the buildings will look like. They will meet the minimum landscaping requirements. There is a minimum of 2 vehicle parking spaces for each one. They're going to meet that requirement. 75 feet is the minimum lot width. They will meet that. Minimum lot width of lot depth is 100 feet. They will have 100 feet depth in their properties. The minimum front yard setback is 25 feet. They're going to have 35 feet. The side yard minimum is 10 feet from the side yard setback on the north and side of the building and the north of Floral, south side of the building fronting North Vine, and a 5 feet setback on the north side of the same building. There will be a minimum 17 feet separation between the two buildings on North Floral Street. The minimum rear setback yard requirements is 25 feet. They're going to have 44 feet. Maximum lot coverage is 40% of the lot, the building coverage, 50-foot right-of-way, and they will have that. So the applicant will pay the parkland fees. Sidewalks will be required per the subdivision ordinance. Curb and gutter will be required. The drainage will be addressed in a civil review, and a replat will be required with this development. The development does promote redevelopment downtown. Both Tarleton and Floral Streets both receive small amounts of traffic, and the estimated increased traffic count should be minimal impact to the traffic flow. Varied land uses are allowed in the Central Business District. The planned development housing should contribute to the overall district. You guys have the developer's packet. The developer is here and can answer any questions. Overall, staff does recommend approval of the concept plan.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Let's open a public hearing. Those wishing to speak in favor of this planned development can do so now. Does the developer want to say anything? Any questions for the developer?
Are these townhouses or duplexes?
Excuse me. By definition, we call them townhouses or attached single-family homes.
If you don't mind coming up, just so we get you up. We want to get you on the record with everything you say, so that way you're locked in.
Hi, I'm Malcolm Canute with Keywade Developments. I would not call these duplexes because it consists of 3 separate buildings, one that has 3 units in it, one that has 4 units, and one that has 6 units in it. They are single-family homes that are attached, and where I come from, when we say townhouses, it means what we're proposing here, an attached single-family home. And down here, when I mention in this area townhouses, everybody seems to come back to me and say, oh, more rental property. And these are not for rent. These are going to be built and sold individually. Doesn't mean they can't be rented if an investor buys one, sure. But we are not building these and putting them for lease.
Is that the major difference between a townhome and a duplex?
Well, a duplex.
Marketplace, I don't.
Well, a duplex to me indicates 2 units per building. My definition might be wrong, but that's just traditionally how I've always thought of a duplex is 2 single-family homes attached versus we have 3, 4, and 6 in this.
Well, that and these are intended to be owned, right?
Yes.
But
yes.
a duplex can be owned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually it's one side's rented and one side might be owned, but.
I think it can be whatever. Yeah, it's just attached. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else here wish to speak in favor of this planned development? Anybody wish to speak against? Closing the public hearing. Commissioners, discussion?
If I may, I'll get Mr. Canute elaborate a little bit on the landscaping, how that's going to be taken care of with the property. Yes, please. Back on the record again. Sorry.
We are putting together a homeowners association that every owner will be part of. The HOA is going to take care of the exterior maintenance of the building and all the landscaping for all the buildings, including the common areas. So we don't know yet what the monthly fee or quarterly fee is going to be. Our intentions are to keep it obviously as minimal as possible, since we're trying to make these units as affordable as possible. But the HOA fee will take care of all the landscaping. And I just got a landscape plan from Level Landscaping this afternoon, and it has very nice landscaping in front of each unit with some bushes and other flowering shrubs and stuff. And we are going to include a minimum, I forgot what I put in there, but it's one parkway tree for every 2 units. So the idea is to try to create a community feel here with the sidewalks and parkway trees, and with it being adjacent to the Bosque River Trail, it's very walkable. And
Yeah, sounds nice.
How does that gonna work for garbage collection? Is that gonna be 13 individual cans, or is that gonna be one big can paid by the HOA? Or?
no, everybody will be responsible for their own garbage, just as if it was a
the
detached
residential
single-family
house.
home. And on the plan, you can see that each of the houses do have a single-car garage, and with keeping the building set back farther from the street at a minimum of 35 feet, it gives you a longer driveway for additional parking.
What are the price ranges for these houses estimated?
We're estimating right now that they're going to start around 160, maybe 165,000, and depending on the amount of upgrades that individual owners put into them, they're like 170s, 175.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jeremy, do we have any ordinances in Stephenville regarding HOAs? I don't think we have many HOAs in this city, do?
Sully, doesn't Sully's Court have an HOA? I know I think they do. I think they have something for maintenance of their front yards. And then the new addition, which on Crenshaw on Prairie Wind is supposed to have an HOA, but those properties aren't getting sold. But I don't know what's going on with that, but it's supposed to have an HOA. It's a new development on Prairie Wind. It's a street called Crenshaw, and they've built 2 houses, and there's a lot of empty lots. It's a very, very, and nobody's bought those 2 houses, so it's the tiniest HOA ever. But there's a proposed HOA.
That gets into some civil. We don't have an ordinance for HOAs. We don't want to enforce HOA stuff. That's all civil, private stuff that they would get into legal if they weren't paying the HO fees or whatnot.
Okay. Well, I've heard some horror stories about HOAs, so.
Could I just point out one other thing?
Sure.
Regarding the HOA. At the beginning of the development, obviously, we will control the HOA and maintain it and enforce it. But I can't remember the last one I did. I think it's at somewhere in between when 70 and 80% of the units are sold. Then we literally turn the homeowners association over to the 13 owners that are here, and then they will elect their own president. They will be responsible for getting the bids for landscaping and everything else. So it's in our hands at the onset, and then when the majority of it gets sold out, it becomes the homeowner's responsibility.
It's
Well,
basically
that's why I asked
contractual.
about the.
I'm sorry?
It's
whether-
basically contractual.
Yes.
We know.
That's why I asked Jeremy about whether we had any local ordinances about HOAs as to what provisions that can be contained in an HOA agreement and what can't. And,
Yeah, I think that's decided solely within that community.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Do we have a motion?
I move we approve case PD 2019-003.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of approval of this plan development district, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, this has been approved. Moving on. Moving on. Okay. Consider recommending an amendment to the Stephenville zoning ordinance sign regulations, section 12-11, prohibited signs, to remove a special exception for off-premise signs, billboards.
So this is a case we heard last month, and it was delayed until April, at least that was the action, but according to the rules of procedure for planning and zoning, we do have to act on the case. You shall make a recommendation to council, and so that's why it's back in front of you for a recommendation. You know, the case has come through for billboards. We've had quite a few cases that have been brought to Board of Adjustment. There's quite a few still on the calendar. We had 4 of them this last month. I think we got a couple coming again next month. So as part of this, you know, council has wanted to look at this policy again. In order to want to look at this, the thought was to prohibit the billboards until a policy can be put in place. In the meantime, your guys' recommendation to deny until council can come up with a committee to recommend something. The council has put that together. It might be a month or 2 or however long it takes them to put together a policy. So this motion is, or this action is to prohibit billboards through special exception, and so will not allow any cases that have not submitted an application. They will not be allowed to submit that application.
And if they have submitted, they're still up
They're
for
vested.
consideration through Board of Adjustment?
That's right.
Okay.
So they're vested.
Okay.
I started this whole fiasco.
I-
so I'll make a
yeah, you-
motion. I'll deny-
Wait,
I
we
moved
have to
it-
do
I
a
moved-
public
I-
hearing first.
Yeah, let's do
sorry.
the public.
Yeah.
hearing. Don't get, don't start us back in.
Jumping in. Okay, let's open a public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak in favor of, let me make sure we get this right, removing the special so this would be removing a special exception for off-premise signs. So this
That's
would be
right.
taking it off of the Board of Adjustment's
Right.
lap and simply saying,
Until
no
we,
billboards until we get this settled.
Right.
Okay, anybody who wishes to speak in favor of that, come to the podium now. And please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, Tommy Roberts, 4282 Trainer Drive in Abilene, Texas. You might be surprised based on what I spoke on last time, but I am in favor of this time. And I'll give you a little bit of feedback on that. I did promise Dr. Petronas that I'd come back with some recommendations, some information for you guys. So if you don't mind, I'll hand that out. I might give Jeremy some flashbacks from Thursday. I think we burnt through a small tree, so
I'm just shocked you still got ink left.
yeah, my bill on our printer is going to be pretty crazy. I only printed 10 copies, so a couple more folks here this time than last time, so I don't have any extra.
He set a record. He talked for an hour and a half.
Yeah. But we're really
It was a
close
record.
after that.
We can say it's a good record. You have to have everybody's got to have a record on their post.
And I emailed this to you, Jeremy. I
Okay.
appreciate it, so. But just in brief, before I jump into this information, through our due diligence of, we had 3 cases before the BOA last Thursday. And through our due diligence of talking to some of the local landowners and business owners around one of our application sites, we learned that one of our competitors was also trying to develop a site close by. And so just to give you a little bit of feedback or a little bit of a story, approximately 2014, 2015, we developed a couple of billboards in Big Lake, Texas. So Big Lake, Texas is about 3,000 people. Got 2 highways running through there. Highway 67 is a primary road. A lot of oil field traffic at this time. So we had some requests for available billboards in that area. There were no billboards in Big Lake at this time. We went and built some the size that we've built here in town, posters, 200 square feet approximately. But Big Lake did not have a sign ordinance. And we encouraged them at that time when we met with the city, you should probably look at putting something into place. And they said, I think we'll just rest on what TxDOT says and we'll just go with that. Well, within 12 months, there was 13 billboards built in a town of 3,000 people, just like that. So one of them being a stacked 10.6 by 36 monstrous billboard, 4 faces on it, right in the middle of town. That undoubtedly got everybody pretty twisted up. So They got a billboard ordinance pretty quickly after that. But, so fast forward to now. I even had an individual, the competitor, came to speak against me in my application, which is unheard of in our industry. And so the last thing I want to see, obviously I'm for billboards, and I'd like to, but it needs to be done correctly. And I think if we get into a billboard war in Stephenville, the first thing that's going to happen is we'll never see another billboard built in this town ever again. So if that means that for now, billboards need to be taken out of the purview of the BOA, which I think is a good move because I think that system's broken, and give it back to city council to review it and see if there's something that can be done. I think it's a good idea. And if they come back, great. If they don't, well, then that's the will of the people then for their elected officials. So I wanted to dive in real quickly into what I brought you guys. Basically, this first page, it's 4 examples. It's Abilene's city ordinance, billboard ordinance, San Angelo's, Brownwood's, and TxDOT. First column is spacing feet-wise between billboards. This is on the same side of the road. And then I also put Stephenville's current sign ordinance along with that. So Abilene, they do 750 and 1500 on the freeway interstate. San Angelo's 500 between billboards. Brownwood is 1,000. TxDOT's 300 inside of city limits, so it's pretty close. And then 1,500 on freeway limited access. Stephenville currently has no spacing between billboards. If I was going to make a suggestion, I'd go with the strongest one. I'd go with 1,500 feet spacing. Radial spacing is basically you take, if there's a billboard, they take a radial spacing around it 250 feet so you don't have a billboard on the right directly across from each other. One community, Abilene, has 250 feet radial spacing. None of the other communities have that, neither does TxDOT. So that would allow for billboards to be placed right across from each other. My recommendation to y'all would be 250 foot minimum radial spacing so that 2 billboards cannot be placed directly across from each other. Zoning wise, Stephenville does not have any zoning ordinance at this time. However, if you look at the other communities, there's a lot of codes on here, but basically for Abilene, that's shopping center, general commercial, heavy commercial, light industrial, heavy industrial, agricultural, open space. San Angelo is heavy commercial, warehouse office, light manufacturing, heavy manufacturing, and then conditionally by artery on general commercial. And then Brownwood is commercial or industrial, and TxDOT is commercial or industrial. My recommendation, basically this is commercial and industrial areas. I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's what I would recommend for Stephenville, to follow that footprint. Then you have some other information as far as max sizes of billboards. These communities, Abilene, San Angelo, their maximum size allowable is 672 square feet. Brownwood is 400 square feet. TxDOT is 672 square feet. Currently, Stephenville sign ordinance limits to 300 square feet. If I was going to make one recommendation to that, I think because Stephenville doesn't have any high-speed, limited access freeways that through the middle of town, most of it's pretty slow traffic as you get into town. I think what you could do is take the 300 square feet and reduce it down to 250 square feet. But inside of your ETJ that you control, I would ask that you guys maybe raise it to 378, and that would allow for a 10-6-36. And the reason why I say that is because basically when you're driving a poster that we've built, a 200 square foot poster is the size of a postage stamp in your mind's eye. But at high speed outside your ETJs, you're coming into town, if you're driving 60, 70 miles an hour, that sign's not very big, and it goes by pretty quick, and it's hard to really relay information. So in the ETJ, you can allow for a little bit bigger sign. So my suggestion would be a trade-off: smaller signs in town, a little bit bigger signs in the ETJ and the arteries coming into town. Residential spacing, currently Stephenville has no residential spacing. Abilene's 135, San Angelo's 100, Brownwood's 150, I think is a good compromise. I think if you had 125 feet from residentially zoned areas, that would make a lot of sense. And then, of course, maximum height there at the end, you can see that the maximum height, Abilene's 42.5, San Angelo's 50, Brownwood's 40, well, actually they go up to 60 in certain areas, but TxDOT is 42.5. So primarily what you see, most of the greatest majority of the boards I build are 35 feet overall. And then of course for Stephenville, y'all's sign ordinance is 30 feet overall, which I think is fine. Maybe you might consider a little bit higher in the ETJ. Now if you turn over to the next page, I wanted to show you guys, So Abilene is conditionally by artery, and if you look at this map, these are the arteries that they're conditionally allowed on, so there's quite a few. But it is limited to certain arteries. The next page is San Angelo. They are conditionally allowed in general commercial areas by artery as well, and you can see that the access is a little more limited than Abilene's. However, in San Angelo, you can build by right in pretty much in industrially zoned areas. So regardless of the artery, if it's industrially zoned, they allow you to build there. So that's a little different from Abilene.
Lacey, you're at a 3 minute.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We're at that 3-minute time. I can see through the rest of your packet here that we've got an option for, a couple different options for Stephenville, and we can review those. I think, it looks like we're going to put a committee together, and I think
Yeah.
this will be useful information for them.
And I'll present this to City Council as well, but one last thing in the last page, basically, I wanted to do this for Jeremy, we talked about a little bit. If you went off those recommendations of 1,500-foot spacing, 200-foot radial, so on and so forth, this basically, I went through and put spacing together, and if you stuck to general commercial areas or industrial, and you stayed 1,500 feet away from parks, that would allow for approximately 23 new billboards to be built in Stephenville. And that's at maximum capacity.
Okay.
So kind of give you all an idea of what y'all are looking at.
Thank you, sir.
Let me ask you a question real quickly. You were talking about Big Lake and they had the 13 billboards in a 3,000 populated area.
Yes, ma'am.
What were they advertising on the billboards?
It's right now, I'll tell y'all right now, I've got 4 attorneys on my billboards in Big Lake. And because,
Attorneys.
yeah, so
Okay.
I don't know about my competitors, but I know what we're advertising, and it's attorneys that are advertising on them.
Interesting.
Jeremy, I'm sure you have you given thought to take this information? You said the city council's already had set up a committee to take a look at this, to review this information, and even potentially to interview this fella to see what we might be able to come up in terms of a policy.
Yeah, so a couple parts to this, to my answer. You guys, your next item will be to appoint somebody to that committee. I'll talk a little bit about what the council decided to do for that committee. I will take these recommendations as well as some other policies and procedures. We'll try to iron something out that works. The recommendation will first be brought to P&Z and then to council, because you guys will have to make a recommendation to council for that.
Okay, did I actually close that public hearing? I don't think I did.
No, ma'am.
Okay, so no one else wishes to speak, so we're going to close the public hearing. I will entertain a motion from the commissioners.
Well, one thing I would bring up again, as this legislation is presented, it would also outlaw inflatable signs, bandit signs, and portable signs. I do believe by definition portable signs would include the LED signs that Signs and Designs and Signs Express Plus have. So I worry about how it could adversely affect them. And I also worry about if we take away billboards now, any avenue for them being legal in our city on the promise that we might reintroduce them at a future time, that kind of harkens to me back to we'll have to pass the legislation to find out what's in it. And I don't think that we should approach it in this manner. If we're going to have a committee to look at this, to refresh our signage ordinance in the future, at least in the aspect of billboards, I actually don't think there's any harm for the next few months continuing with what we currently have and working through this committee to come back at a later time with an update to the ordinance. So I would actually move that we do not accept this change here tonight. I believe that we can work through the committee and come back at a later time.
There was a second?
Yeah, we can do the discussion. I was just seconding.
Yeah. My discussion point would be, there's been a contention that the Board of Adjustments is not, that they're not able to be objective because of the way the criteria is laid out, and that's the complaint I heard from people. So I would suggest that would be the problem with continuing it as is, and it seems to make more sense to me to simply stop the process, allow what's in the works to continue in the works, stop the process, get this committee together, figure out what we're gonna do, and move on from there.
Educate me real quick on that note, if you could, because I'm not familiar with the Board of Adjustment issues. What
Okay.
is- What is like, show one that got approved versus one that didn't, or something along those lines. I'm not in getting the specifics,
Yeah.
just, you know,
We have a member of the Board of Adjustments here. Carrie, do you want to speak to that? Or,
I mean, just out of curiosity.
Okay,
I don't
you-
know.
Can I
brought
talk to
this
this,
up.
because I think
Yeah.
I have some level of
You brought this up
experience
last
with
time, I
this.
think, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, here's the thing with the BOA. BOA being a quasi-judicial board, their decision-making process has to be legal in its base, whereas you guys have the ability to be legislative and can base your decisions on your own personal biases. And so if I present a prima facie case for a billboard based on the criteria that I've been given, at a location that is been deemed undesirable by someone on the BOA. However, no evidence has been presented to counter that. No one has stood up and countered any of my assertions. And they still vote against me based on their own personal biases. That's broken. And so, and you know, you guys probably have some legal background more than I do, can attest to that. So I think that it needs to be taken out of the hands of BOA, because there's gonna be other people, not me. I mean, just think about this. Y'all gotta deal with me right now. What if you had to deal with 5 of me? And so they're gonna understand that at some point. And so I feel like they could present a location to the BOA that's in a location that the city doesn't want to have, and you'll be painted into a corner. And so my recommendation is to take it, stop it now, and fix it, because there may be other applicants that come that want to put billboards, because right now the entire city's open. And so I just warn against that's probably not the best way to handle it.
What about a moratorium for 60 days on new billboards to get this planning committee together to come up with the policy?
We have to act on this, right?
we're required to make a recommendation to council.
Can we adjust? And the concern with me is the same as the billboard flashing temporary signs that are 355 is not the discussion here. But they're on here and included in that, correct?
Right.
So can we just scratch out, make the recommendation to put in to take away the billboard issue and leave in the temporary sign?
Yeah, you could.
So restrict this strictly to billboard.
Would you like to adjust your amend your motion to that?
Well,
That's the easy approach.
Yeah. Everybody seems to say that the Board of Adjustment is having issues with the billboard issue, and that is apparent. So I'm not opposed to us taking it out of the hands of the Board of Adjustment. I just really don't think that we should take away the avenue, the pathway for billboards being able to be legal in the short term. I think we should go ahead and work on it, but as kind of an aside to the existing legislation. I'm worried that if we take them out now, then they'll just accidentally, never come back into existence to have a pathway towards being legal. So I'm certainly concerned about that, but it's also apparent that we do need to move it away from the Board of Adjustment, and I'm open to that possibility over the next couple of months.
That's what I'm saying, why don't we put a time limit and a moratorium?
But regardless, we're required to make a
That's right.
something to
Now,
council.
with moratoriums, there has to be public notices. We have to call a meeting within, 15 days. I'm not going to quote you on it because I'd have to go back and look at it, but it would require a special public hearing, a meeting by you guys, and then subsequently approved by council within like 10 days of that motion. I mean, there's some specific guidelines for moratoriums that we would have to go through that process. So that cannot be part of this motion, so you either approve or deny. You can make a recommendation to me to put something together to do that, and we can look at that process, but this one has to be acted upon
My
first.
only problem with that is that I can see where this thing could go on ad infinitum. Never, 6 months or whatever, and these people I agree with you, need a decision. And that's why I'm suggesting, let's let's say, council, get your committee together, get your policy going, let's consider it and go from there.
Yeah, you can make a recommendation to council, and council can, uphold your decision or go against your decision, but a decision has to be made on this particular
That
item.
would be my recommendation to the city council.
I have a question. I'm new, and when I was here years ago, we put together the ordinances. We were the ones who wrote the ordinances, sent them to city council for approval. Why are we not doing that now with the sign ordinance now? Why are we sending it to them to make this decision? It
We're
was
not,
our ordinance.
you already said that the council has taken it upon themselves to form this committee to now come up with the policy, correct?
The special exception wasn't included in
Right.
what planning and zoning sent to city council, correct? That was added by city
City
council.
council, yes.
How did that not come back to P and Z?
Well, it went from us to city council.
And then this
We
was added.
recommended 4 billboards is what the city council, or what we recommended to city council. City council added that it will go through Board of Adjustment.
No,
No?
so the special exception was in there. It was in the sign ordinance originally.
us.
What happened with council is it went back to council for the stipulations, or I say stipulations, the criteria for them to be approved. So you guys did approve the special exception in there. And so what council has done is they've created a committee, since we're talking about it anyways, the council has created a committee to look at it, which includes a planning and zoning commissioner, somebody who owns a billboard, somebody who owns a property, Keep Stephenville Beautiful. A council member will be on that. So yes, you can do it multiple ways, but ultimately, whatever policy, which in this case is what we're doing with that board, will have to come back to planning and zoning for a recommendation first. So if they bring something back that you guys are just like, no, go back to the starting board, it'll never make it to council. So you have that authority to make recommendations and changes.
My recommendation would be, is to take it back in our hands. We develop an ordinance and send it back to city council and include the billboards as one ordinance with the signage. And then I think that would clean up a lot of this, in my opinion.
Well, council's already made an action to create a
they have.
board, so
They want it, and then they're gonna send it back to us to approve.
well, they're not going to hear it. They won't hear, the council will not hear it again until after P and Z makes a recommendation. So like I said, they have 5 members that'll be part of it, 1 being P and Z, 1 being council, Keep Stephenville Beautiful, a billboard owner. Those are the 5 people that will write a policy or bring a policy to you guys for a recommendation. So council is not going to be writing that policy. Ultimately, you guys will be making that recommendation. So it's you're kind of right in the middle. You don't have to worry about council writing that necessarily, but they can overturn whatever recommendation you guys come
When
up
I
with.
got on this, when I was first on P and Z, we were on draft number 12, Meta. Looks like this is gonna be a same situation we're gonna be dealing with again, Todd. And so we're on draft 12. This is gonna be 2 to 3 years unless we step up and we make a decision and we put an ordinance together that's gonna work for everybody and then make a decision and send it forward. That's we have to act on this now. I
The decision
understand
now
that.
is, do we stop billboards or do we not stop billboards?
Right.
Along with temporary signs.
I think it's just fine to continue on with what we have for the next month or so. I don't think we need to proactively make them illegal in the short term. I think we can leave it as is and work on the ordinance in the future.
But I think what we're doing is stopping, by saying yes, if we were to take away the special exemption, correct me if I'm wrong, we're stopping any applications.
Correct.
And that's what we're really trying to do, is stop the application flow.
Until we figure out what we're doing.
Until we figure out what we're doing.
That's what makes sense to me, to stop the process, quickly figure out what we're doing, and then approve whatever we do.
Right.
But only for billboards.
Only for billboards.
Well, now, that's not what we're doing though, we're stopping it for everything.
Right. You can amend your motion like you were talking about. I mean, you can take out the rest of it and just say for billboards. That's okay in this particular
Well,
case.
he can do, are you not gonna accept that friendly amendment?
Well,
If he doesn't, you can make.
I know.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Make it a
I'm
hostile.
sorry. I was trying to keep it clear. I wasn't trying to get hostile. I was trying to make it clear, so.
I'm just trying to make it friendly.
Yeah.
well,
Justin's very
honestly-
pro-sign, I think.
yeah,
Yeah, he
I would
wants all of
honestly
them.
like to see it stay as is right now. I think the Board of Adjustment can deal with a few requests for another month or two, I think we can handle this a different way and just keep things as is for right now.
Okay, so that was the motion Justin put forth. Todd, you seconded. Do you
I-
actually still second it?
I mean, I'm not gonna make it that complicated, so I could rescind my second, but I'm not going to. I'll just vote no to it and then.
Okay, so let's go ahead and vote. Those who wish to leave the policy as is and continue with the Board of Adjustment, reviewing billboard applications, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say aye. How about raise your hand so we're real clear? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So
That motion failed?
that motion failed. So so I need another motion.
I move that we deny case number ZA 2019, in favor of 2019 with the exception of only billboards. I don't know how to phrase that. Leave
That's good.
temporary billboards, temporary signs alone.
Yeah.
Except for
Yeah,
billboards.
just-
Accepting
Except for
billboards.
Just the billboards.
I'm only removing billboards. I don't know, tell me the proper way to phrase that and I will phrase it.
So you're denying case number ZA 2019-02.
No, I'm accepting it with the inclusion of
exception.
only
Billboards.
billboards. All other language stays in the ordinance.
That's right. So basically 1211A1 will say, permanent off-premise, so permanent off-premise signs, billboards, inflatable signs, bandit signs, portable signs shall be prohibited in each city or ETJ unless permitted through special exception. It's basically just gonna say only those will be allowed except for billboards, will not be part of that. So we will remove billboards from that section.
Now, as it stands, inflatable signs, bandit signs, portable signs are allowed through special exception?
That's
That's
right.
what that implies.
That's
Are we
right.
really allowing bandit signs? That's not gonna get,
That's the way.
I say yes until we can revisit the
All right.
ordinance. And
All right.
until we can come back with a good ordinance.
all right. So we've had a motion, and do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, those in favor of this motion to, so this will essentially prohibit only billboards within the city. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Just Justin, or, yes, Justin, okay. All right, so that motion passes.
That's a recommendation that will
Sorry,
be
it's a
taken to council.
recommendation.
Sorry, just make sure we're all clear.
Sorry.
so.
That recommendation passes. Okay, now,
In my mind, 70% of it, and all of a sudden it just, that Titanic did the thing.
okay, so now we need to consider a member to serve on the committee to consider policy for billboards. And,
Since I'm such a troublemaker, I would volunteer for that.
okay, and Matt has also volunteered for that. Anyone else? Bruce?
All volunteer.
How many members we put in?
One. Quick staff report, just on this, is that council approved, like I said a while ago, a council member, planning and zoning commissioner, Keep Stevensville Beautiful, a property owner that has a billboard on their location, and somebody who owns a billboard. So that's who we've come up with so far.
Have those members been appointed?
We do have all of them except for two so far, which is planning and zoning and billboard owner, I believe.
Okay. Anybody else wish to be considered? I guess we need to vote, correct?
Three nominations?
We have three nominations. Do we need seconds? Do we need nominations and seconds? Do we just do a straight vote?
I think you just do a straight vote.
Straight vote?
I mean, it's up to you guys how you guys want to handle it. I mean,
Is a straight vote okay? All right, those in favor of Bruce, raise your hand. Those in favor of Meta, raise your hand. Those in favor of Justin, raise your hand. Looks to me like Meta carries the day.
I would say congratulations. But we'll see.
I don't understand
I don't know.
any of you. I don't understand any of you. Okay, I believe I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this.
So moved.
Quick note for you guys, some of you guys toughed it out the last week with that joint meeting that we were gonna have for the impact fees. We did have that group stay, and they gave a really late night presentation. We have that presentation. I'll email it out to you guys, so you guys will be able to see that.
Video form?
We have video form. It's not good video, so I think the presentation will probably answer most of your questions. They have a PowerPoint presentation that they did. So that's just the preliminary stages of the impact fees. It won't. There's no motion, no action at this point. So.
All right, good to see you.
No, no. I didn't think I was gonna win. I'm doing this on principle.